Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. All right, so today I have Stephen Weigler on the line, and he's founding attorney over at Emerge Counsel. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
All right, Stephen. So we got a lot to cover today. A lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives that listen to this show, and business law and IP and protecting IP. I mean, these are big topics that always love to have individuals on the line to speak on. So we'll get into this, of course, and more. But before we do, we'll start this episode the way that we start them all, with what we like to call our Mission Matters Minute. So, Steve, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Steve, what mission matters to you?
That's a really interesting question, Adam. My mission comes from my background as I was an entrepreneur. I had a predictive analytics company. And when I was doing that, I realized that, gosh, I am an attorney. Talking to the attorney or focusing on law was like the least thing on my agenda every day. And it was partially because it's such a arcane and kind of cumbersome subject. And number two, it's just they're not part of your C team, which would be chief marketing officer, CFO, chief operating officer, et cetera. So you're not talking to them every day about everything. So my mission is to be, after I exited the predictive analytics company, my focus became to be an empathetic and strategic thinker and someone that an entrepreneur could really see like the strategic benefit in partnering with or getting to know to provide business and IP legal advice to clients. And so a lot of times my mission, and it's come to fruition, is to be like this independent channel of C-level type of relationship with business executives to vet and strategically plan their businesses, especially on the legal issues.
So lots of different things that you could have done as a lawyer in terms of your next step after, exiting the other company. What kept you in the game or still focused on business owners? Like, what drew you to that market?
Well, I think a lot of attorneys, and I was talking about this today with a client, a lot of attorneys, they go to law school and they find a niche. And I originally started as a prosecutor of all things. So, but they find a niche, they stick with it, and they do well a lot of times financially, but they don't really have the background of having experiences such as being the CEO of their company, building a company. In my case, I had to raise money, so I know that whole thing. And so a lot of attorneys aren't particularly well-rounded, and I'm not disparaging the profession, but, they act as counsel. So when I had the experience, first I worked for a Fortune 50 company. I was inside counsel at a major company. And then I next had the opportunity to start my own entrepreneurial endeavor. That was a multi-million-dollar company, but started from scratch. I really had these unique kind of experiences in life. And I was like, what is the best way that I can take those experiences and really be kind of a unique counsel through those experiences, and frankly, it's competitive advantage to my clients. And so I really just took down what my skills are and what my unique value proposition is and put it down on a piece of paper and founded the firm about 8 years ago based on that. The first aspect of that was everyone needs to have a brand. And so it could be an executive and you need a personal brand. If it's a company, and that's usually what you represent, it needs to have a unique value proposition to its consumers. And so protecting that intellectual property specifically through trademark was the first thing I endeavored in. And then, a lot of my companies have grown, and not all, but a lot have grown. And so my skills of like M&A, exit, strategically planning for investment, strategically focusing on the right cap table, all those types of things have grown along with my initial focus, which again was protecting brand.
Yeah, I find that super interesting. I've done a lot of interviews, and I don't find as many individuals focusing on brand when it comes to the law side of things. I mean, I feel like the basics, and I shouldn't say basic, but the checking the box of getting your copyright done or getting some trademark done or whatever your path is usually kind of the forefront. But can you talk a little bit more about like just that concept of the brand? Because I feel like you have a unique insight because you were a business owner and an entrepreneur and all these other things. Like you just have a whole different view from that.
Sure. So I always say that unless you have the cure for cancer, which in that case, who cares? Like your cure for cancer is going to carry the day, right? Mm-hmm. And who cares what it's called? Who cares how it interfaces with the customer or the end user? And because it could be the most painful treatment in the world, and it still is going to cure something that's life debilitating. That's one case scenario. But for the rest of us, we're going to usually have competitors, and we want to have strategic advantage. And so strategic advantage is through brand. Brand just means how the consumers, or it could be business to business, business to consumer, how they perceive your good or your service. So if you're selling widgets, that's always a classic legal one, that the widget could look like any other widget. Same with almost everything. And so how are you going to make the customer experience better or distinguish yourself, more importantly, with the customer experience? It's through identifying brand. And so I can give you a classic example is an Oreo. Like, close your eyes. We've never met in person, but right now we close our eyes and we can see the exact brand of Oreos. We can picture that black cookie with a white frosting and the packages in the store and everything about that brand. Well, that's a well-established and well-protected brand. And so when you start, no one knows what your good or your service is. So you really have to, work hard to get that brand. Well, if you are getting it, are putting it together, and you never took the time to protect it or figure out why am I protecting this and what am I protecting, you don't have a strategy. Well, it's worthless, and you're going to get crushed in the marketplace. So just filing a trademark, or a lot of people are like, well, I could do that myself. Well, yeah, I mean, you could try and fill out the forms yourself, but having a brand strategy, that's something you need to work with an attorney.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the, and I don't want to like overgeneralize because I know you've been working doing this for a long time. So I know that over time, maybe certain themes tend to arise. Like, where do people tend to go wrong, or have you found a lot of people go wrong in those initial stages of really protecting and or establishing their brand?
Sure. So it's establishing their brand and establishing their business. Both are crucial. It's number one is it's just, I just call it deliberate. Like you're deliberate. Most successful entrepreneurs are deliberate in their game. Like they're not, they just didn't put up a lemonade stand and hope that people came. Like they have a plan, a business plan. But so it's like, what's your legal strategy? And so it's just a little bit of deliberation. Do you think your name's going to carry it? Do you have to create a logo or a label? How do you define your value proposition to your audience? And is some of the instructions going to be like copyrighted, or how are you going to protect that? Is it something that you really have an invention, like, my cure for cancer example? Or is it, a really unique design? Do we have to get some patent protection up front? Is it something that you're manufacturing yourself, which is unlikely? Or do you have manufacturers, and are the manufacturers overseas? And how are you going to protect the secret elements of the trade secret elements of your manufacturing contract. And so, because a lot of times these are all things that entrepreneurs kind of leave to chance or kind of it's kind of the minutia that they don't necessarily have fine focus on, where they have fine focus on the rest of their business. So just a simple, easy, usually free call with an attorney like me, who can kind of framework, well, what are your, what's your plan, and how are we going to, either now or over time, depending on your circumstances, how are we going to protect that? And the same holds true on the business side with a lot of times entrepreneurs are like, well, the person, they partner up, and then they partner up, and the partner has a unique value proposition at the beginning of the business, but has no experience in running a business or sales or marketing. And, so they get to the point where it's like the commercialization, and the partner's nowhere to be found. And so, and there's no details on really how to get an earn out or something where you can get out of that partnership or corporation or whatever you choose to form. And so it's really like strategically thinking about, like, all right, well, what are the stages of the business, and does your legal framework protect those stages of the business? And, I'm not around to tell you if you're making the right decision or not, although I might have an opinion. But, bring up these issues so you don't really, so your legal plan is flexible, just like your business plan. And so these are the things that, like, unfortunately for the entrepreneur, because it's the time they have the least amount of money, but these are the types of things that should be at least, the person should be educated, or the leaders of the company should be educated at the beginning of the enterprise, as opposed to, like when they call with a business divorce or someone's infringing in India or wherever.
Are there any kind of, or I should say, what differences or nuances do you find when it comes to either protecting the brand or the business when it comes to, your traditional maybe brick and mortar to e-com? Are there some big differences there that you consider? Because I know e-com is still pretty new for many.
Yeah. Well, I mean, brick and mortar kind of goes at a certain stage, right? It's you could start with one and then maybe get to 10, but each one requires a lease or something. So it requires a lot of people and scale. When you get to like a virtual business, it's almost like there's less to do to open a location or a channel, but at the same time, it becomes harder to forecast supply and demand, and it could, and the margins, you're competing against incredibly tight margins sometimes because you have competitors, and it's driven down the price on e-commerce. So those are the types of things to think about, that you're basically in a brick and mortar. If I opened a store where I live in Denver, maybe someone in Denver would see it, maybe when someone would see it at a website, but when you're blasting it out to the world, you're exposing your entire business plan, your intellectual property, your business assets, everything to a lot of people, overseas, not overseas, competitors, consumers. And so you really have to be armed with kind of a strategy of basic protection that much more early on. Otherwise, you're not going to make it in that industry. And so that requires keen, sometimes business forecasts and as well as legal forecasts. Again, it's like, well, where do you think your business is going? What's your end game? Is this a lifestyle business? Is this a heavy growth business? Are we going to have to get investors? Is it, are aggregators looking at your kind of product? All these types of things. And once we know that, and again, it's like could be a 20-minute discussion. And that's one thing attorneys have an advantage of. We, have hundreds of calls on various businesses and see so many plays. and also know the exits on those plays. But it could be a 20-minute discussion, but we're still going to have an idea of who you are, who your business is, and then we can really, kind of put together a forecast on where we think, your legal needs lie. One thing I want to emphasize, Adam, that's really important is that attorneys, if you're interviewing attorneys, because I'm not the only one out there, when I started this practice, I realized that we have to understand the business and the entrepreneur. So we have to understand the team. I mean, not that we get touchy-feely and we're not psychologists, but really understand who the person we're dealing with or working with is, and second, what the business is. And once we understand that, we can really be much more effective in our work. And so at Emerge Consult, the first thing I did is said, we're going to do this part to understand the entrepreneur and their needs and to kind of strategize on our dime. Like attorneys shouldn't be charging for like an initial consult or even subsequent consults when it's like touch base to understand the business and the progress and what's going on with it. Because it just makes our work a lot easier and and also who we work with and building those relationships. It makes everyone's life a lot easier. And so as opposed to, going out to lunch or dinner or something like that, we spend our kind of non-productive time really understanding the client. And you should really look for my advice to your audience is we're not the only ones that do that, but you absolutely should find an attorney that's willing to go a little bit deeper on your understanding your plans.
So speaking of that, Steve, well, first off, it's been great having you on the show and to get your insight and to learn a little bit more about what it takes to protect and develop a brand. So it's been great having you on. But if somebody wants to follow up, I know we just barely touched the subject, only so much you can, fit in a 20-some minute podcast interview. But if somebody wants to follow up and, continue the conversation with you or your team, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. So my email is SWEIGLER Weigler at Emerge, EMERGE, Counsel, COUNSEL, not CEL, SEL.com, or www.emergecounsel.com. Anyone can book a free initial consult to talk about your business. And if you're looking at brand, we even do free what's called knockout searches, which a lot of firms charge a lot for. Just email me or call me. The number's on my .com, and we can get that set up. And that's really how to contact me. Glad to talk to anyone about their businesses and their business needs and just get to know them.
That's awesome. Well, again, Steve, appreciate you coming on the show today. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. I hope you got a lot of value out of this. Hope you learned a lot. And if you did, don't forget, hit that subscribe button. We have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line, and we don't want you to miss a thing. Thanks again for coming on today, Steve.
A pleasure, Adam.